Welcome into week 2 of the playoff preview show here at Keon Sports. It was such a hit week 1, we brought it back for another try. Gentlemen, welcome back in.
Well, good to be back, Vince. We appreciate it as always. Last week was fun. Ready for another week.
Absolutely. Dom, how you feeling?
There's two Mac games going on right now. We're doing this. I got my iPad. I got my TV. You got Ohio. And there's so much going on right now, Vince. I'm excited for the All Italian podcast right now.
One of these days soon, my friend. Brandon, how we cooking?
Doing well. First week of playoffs in the books. Not a lot of surprises, really, but I've got a feeling that's going to change this week.
Nope, this is really, to me, when it all truly look at Tom. My goodness.
Why does that exist?
Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it beautiful?
It's something.
That's perfect.
Something.
Absolutely beautiful, guys. All right, listen, we have a packed show tonight. We're going to try to get it all in. Actually, I have a bonus question for Cole and Brandon at the end of the show. Hopefully we get to it. So let's get started right away. Guys, I'm not the kind of guy, you've known me for a long time. I'm not Mr. I told you so kind of guy, but there were a lot of blowouts. The 1 through 4 seeds went undefeated. There were some 5 seeds and 6 seeds that lost, but for the most part, kind of went chalk like we thought. But one of the games that we really talked a lot about last week was Strongsville at Medina. Cole, you were there, and it was pretty interesting in the first half.
Yeah, it was interesting. There were a lot of resemblances to that first game in the matter of how the game played out. Now, Strongsville actually didn't come out with the same game plan on defense, kind of like Dom and I had talked about. We didn't think that they could put 2 down linemen out there defensively and make that work. Medina had already seen it. They really didn't do much of that. They still had plenty of guys dropped into coverage, but they put a little bit more in the box. Now, what was resemblant was the sense of Strongsville at least hanging around for the first half, making things interesting, making it difficult on Medina to win that game. Here's the thing that you didn't see on the box score. As much if you just saw what the scores were, you were following along with my tweets, you even followed along with the article. What maybe you didn't notice quite as much as I saw in person is it should have honestly been a bigger spread there. There should have been more of a difference in the sense of how Medina performed in that first half. They probably should have won by more. They were moving the ball just fine, but issues when they got into Strongsville's side of the field, that's when things fell apart a little bit in that first half, and then they got it clicking in the second half. I mean, a turnover on downs, that was one thing. After a catch at about the 30-yard line of Strongsville, a fumble recovered by the Mustangs. At the 1-yard line, instead of running the ball up the middle, they threw that little delayed slant that you saw maybe in the video that I tweeted out, and the Strongsville linebacker slid underneath in coverage, dove down and intercepted it. So there were points that could have easily been scored for Medina that they left on the board. In the second half, they were able to end up just getting those points, and they won big, running clock at the end of the game. Strongsville played well. They fought. They really did. But Medina showed the physicality we were wondering if they would show. They came out with some times of Stoddard under center taking the snaps. They brought some guys over from the defensive side into the backfield to run the ball. It was a little bit reminiscent of some of the things we've seen them do in past seasons in goal line situations. And obviously we know that they still have the ability to spread the field. But if they can add that physicality, hey, we're talking about them getting to play against a team like St. Ed's or somebody along those lines later in the postseason. We'll wait and see what happens, but hey, maybe Medina listened to us when we when we talked about needing that physicality on the last show.
Well, head coach Larry Leard, a friend of mine, obviously, Facebook and in person, know each other. I know we have a huge following in Medina, to say the least, so it wouldn't shock me. Speaking of huge followings, guys, I want to throw this out there too. We have a massive following in the Avon Lake area. I've talked about it all the time. Avon Lake, really, and Olmsted Falls, really put Keon Sports on their feet. So some good news. I'm not sure if everybody's seen it yet, but we will have Jenna DeBlasi on the scene this Friday in Toledo for the big one, Avon Lake versus Toledo Central Catholic. Watch out for that one. Speaking of Catholic, I was at Byersfield for St. Ignatius, and this is something I'm just going to say. It's coming right from the heart. Maybe the worst high school football game I've ever seen in my life. At halftime, I wanted to just quit. It was bad. Basically, this was the exact situation I was worried about happening when we had this conversation last week. It makes me wonder about the Senate League, how John Marshall could pick up 5 wins. Guys, they couldn't fill the punt. They couldn't fill the kickoff. Their first 4 plays went false start, too many men on the field, had to call a timeout, fumble, turnover. And they did not get past their own 30-yard line the entire first half. By halftime, it was 31-0. St. Ignatius had cleared the bench, playing all freshmen, taking knees, snapping the ball, taking a knee. This needs to stop. I said it last week. This game to me gives me even more verification of how I feel about things. You look at St. Edward's versus Stowe. That was a blowout with the JV team of St. Ed's. You look at Lorraine versus man, it eludes me right now, but just a ton of blowouts last week. So again, I think in Division I they need to cut. If you want to go 16, don't do it. Cut it down to 12 somehow, and maybe give those top 4 seeds a bye, because most of the starters with the exception of Cole's game, which was pretty close in the first half,
right?
For the most part, what I saw last week in Ignatius was truly horrible. I felt bad for everybody involved. I felt bad for John Marshall, that they were part of that. I felt bad that, Chuck Kyle, who was a head coach with so few games to go, had to waste, and I'll use the word waste, one of his final games on that debacle. It just wasn't fair to anybody involved. So wanted to throw that out there. It was one of the few times I left a high school football game without a smile on my face. So just something to think about. But also, there was another game going on. And Dom, I want you to talk a little bit about what you saw with Olmsted Falls. And when it comes to high school football, I learned a long time ago never to make predictions, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to put my foot right in my mouth as hard as I can. I'm predicting Olmsted Falls wins by 2 touchdowns over Anthony Wayne, if not more. Did not like what I saw at Anthony Wayne. Went back and watched a lot of highlights. They barely got past North Ridgeville. All three of you in this Boston, you saw North Ridgeville. For Anthony Wayne, and you saw Olmsted Falls, for Anthony Wayne just to skid by North Ridgeville like they did. Dom, I'll let you tell the story about Olmsted Falls and what you saw on Friday night, but how do you see it going? And first of all, how was your game? And then how do you see this coming week going? Will I be right? Will it be a 2-touchdown win for Falls?
I mean that's hard to say, but let me talk about the the Olmsted Falls game against the Toledo St. John's. By the way, Toledo St. John's Jesuit might be one of the greatest 5-5 teams I've ever seen, because they just threw the ball down the field and completed big passes. The only reason why that scored looks as big as it was because they could not buy a stop. They had one defensive stop the entirety of the game, Vince. I mean, they couldn't buy a stop, and when it came, they were down by 2 touchdowns. Couldn't move the ball down the field. Game was pretty much over after that.
What about our Italian brother from a different mother, Rocco Conti?
I'll tell you what.
I read your article. He went off.
Got to. I never talked to him before, right? So I've interviewed him. Great kid, smile on his face. And I never interviewed him. Never talked to him. It would be a great kid. Had a smile on his face. He's humble. I'll say it again. The fact that he's only getting preferred walk-ons from Ohio and not scholarships from smaller D1 and every single D3 and D2 school in the nation is absurd to me, Vince. This kid should be playing at the next level. And if you're a college recruiter, you need to recruit him. Shame on you for not giving this kid his flowers, what he deserves, because he's one of the best high school players in the country, let alone just Ohio. And I will fully believe that. I will die on that hill, Vince.
Absolutely. And let me say this real quick before you get to Anthony Wayne and what's going to happen there. And this is just, hey, again, it's our show. We can do whatever we want. I'll say it. The Conti family is beyond humble. I've known his Aunt Germa, her name is, and again, more Italians out there. I've known Aunt Germa for probably 15 years before I made the correlation that Conti was related to her. So I just know the family personally. They're good people. And what you said speaks volumes. I didn't mean to cut you off,
No,
but
you're
again,
good.
it does speak volumes. And it's funny because we all live real lives, right? I went up to a local establishment for a sandwich over the summer, and who was working a summer job and made me that sandwich but Rocco Conti. And it was one of those moments where he looked at me, I looked at him, and we both kind of thought like, boy, this is odd. But you know what? I ordered the Italian sandwich. He nailed it. So there you go. But go ahead, Anthony Wayne. What's going to happen?
So, I mean, let's be real here. When you look at North Ridgeville without any context, right? Just look at the record, the past record. That's a trap game, right? To extent where you don't know how talented that team is. That team has a lot of talent that's currently untapped, right? And that's not because of the coaching staff. The coaching staff does a fantastic job at North Ridgeville. They're just young and they're still figuring things out. They make so many young mistakes, but there's a lot of talent on that side. We saw a North Ridgeville team last week that was unlocking that talent, but still making mistakes. And Anthony Wayne, right? That's a school. I'm not messing that up. Yeah, I think they were taken by surprise. They were not expecting a challenge. They were expecting a team that was true to the record, not a team that's played below the record with tons more talent. It's because of how young North Ridgeville is. They're going to do their best to compete with Olmsted Falls. It's going to be competitive for a half. But Olmsted Falls, they just overwhelm their opponents, Vince. I mean, they just run the ball. They're stifling on defense. They hit hard. Their line delivers huge hits. This team will take the air out of you by the time the third quarter hits. That's what happened with Toledo St. John's. It's probably what's going to happen with Anthony Wayne. But Anthony Wayne, don't let last week fool you. They wouldn't be, a 4 seed if they didn't deserve it, right? We don't know too much about them. They're going to give Olmsted Falls all that they can handle. The question is when will Olmsted Falls figure out when to get that 2-touchdown lead? So I agree with you. They'll get it, but I don't think it will be as easy as we assume it will be.
Couple of things to look out for there as well. Young Jimmy Rosel, the sophomore quarterback for Olmsted Falls, has done a phenomenal job this year, but he is a sophomore. 14, 15 years old, maybe 16, right? So it's a big moment for that young man. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and lay an egg. I actually think he's going to be pretty damn good.
One quick thing. 1 pass, 1 completion, 1 touchdown for Jimmy Rosel, the greatest stat line of all time, straight out of 1947.
Chicken Parmigiano. Just delicious. Anyways, my whole point was is that the other thing is that I just made that trip to Toledo a few weeks ago. It is not short. It's not short. So as Cole, a D3 athlete there knows, and Dom as well, you guys both played sports football in the Wallace. You made your share of road trips, getting off that bus, stretching out, getting loose. It's probably going to take those guys a little bit. So I do expect it to maybe be tied at halftime, Falls to run away with it. Speaking of running, there are 3 teams, and we're going to go to Brandon here with this. To me, there are 3 teams that can make a serious run at a state title that nobody's talking about, and I think it's a huge mistake because all 3 of these teams run the ball like nobody's business. Brandon, what do you think about Columbia, Holy Name, and Elyria Catholic? Do any one of the 3 of them have a chance to go deep?
So I'll kind of give my full pick at the end, but I honestly believe that 2 out of 3 of these teams have a very good shot at least making the Final Four in their respective divisions. But when it comes to being successful in high school football playoffs specifically, one of the biggest factors you have to look at is being able to limit your mistakes. And the best way to do that is to have your offense run through the ground game, no pun intended. And all 3 of these teams that you mentioned have done a phenomenal job of this all year. And I'll kind of break them down as we go through. So Holy Name to start off. Top team in their division, number 1 seed. They have what we were initially calling a 3-headed monster in their backfield. Really, there's 4 guys we need to talk about here, though. So their lead back, Christian Sanchez, nearly 90 yards on the ground per game, 5'11", 225, the definition of a power back. I mean, he's a workhorse. You hand the ball to him, 4 yards on a cloud of dust, but he still has that ability to really break something off. A 52-yard touchdown round last week in their playoff game against Copley. I'm getting ahead of myself here. That's Javon Williams. But again, Kristen Sanchez, he's been Mr. Reliable all year. He's got that strength to be a reliable back for you. It hasn't really had any injury concerns at this point. He's power forward on the basketball team as well. So, he's got that, that strong ability in his legs. He's been key to holding names so far. And then Javon Williams, the quarterback, again, very dangerous when you have someone who's a capable passer, but is arguably even more effective with his legs. 52 yards per game on the ground this year and nearly 100 yards passing as well. So you have to respect both parts of his game, which just, it's hard to plan for as a defense if that's the only thing that you're planning for, much less having to worry about Sanchez and these other runners as well. The 52-yard touchdown run that I mentioned against Copley was actually from Javon Williams. So he's got probably the best speed out of anybody in that backfield, and doing it from the quarterback position, just that much more dangerous. You've got Kashawn Garner as well, who's listed as a strong safety. So primarily on the defensive side of the ball, but they use him as a change of pace back every once in a while. He's got 44 yards per game, 6 foot, 200 pounds. You watch him, he's not the strongest back. He's not the fastest back by any means, but he's balanced. He can do everything for you. And just the little bit of the tape that I got to watch on Garner, his vision is excellent. He's very patient, waiting behind the line and waiting for his opportunity to strike. So even though he may not have the greatest athleticism on the field, he has, he's solid enough in that area, and combining that with his ball carrier vision makes him another dangerous target there. And then finally, their fullback too, we need to talk about, guys. Austin Wondolowski, second on the team in rushing touchdowns. He's got 6 on the year already. They love to use him around the goal line. Top of that, guys, he's 3rd in receiving average too. So they're using their fullback all over the place. Like I said, love to use him around the goal line, but he's got that big playability as well. Again, last week against Copley, which was a little bit of a blowout, I understand that, but 57-yard breakaway for Wondolowski, not something you usually see out of the fullback position. So really what makes Holy Name difficult, like any one of these backs is a dangerous weapon. When you're a defensive coordinator and you have to sit there and try to figure out how to game plan for every one of these players, it's not possible. They're all different styles of runner, right? You literally game plan for every single one of those and then also have to worry about Javon Williams passing on you. So again, it's an effective offense because of the different ways they're able to kind of run that ball down your throat and limit those mistakes, as I'm saying.
Now, I want to say this.
Go ahead.
I want to say this real quick too about Holy Name before you get to Columbia and Elyria Catholic. I covered Holy Name twice this year, maybe 3 times, but at least twice. One of the games was against Normandy with Sanchez out. Kristen Sanchez did not play. He was hurt. Javon Williams got hurt earlier in that game as well. The 2 other backs you mentioned, Wando and Pearson, they both went for over 100 yards and just dominated. It's a system offense. Got to shout out my Denver Broncos. You saw it a lot in the 90s and the early 2000s, Cole, where they were smiling at me. It is a system, right? It's zone blocking. And like you said, these might not be the biggest, strongest, fastest kids, but if they learn that system, they could dominate. But again, you want to talk about running back factories. We've known it for a long time with Brandon Coleman in Columbia and now Marco Sirigliano. And I'm sure I butchered that as well. And I talk about the kid every week. Cannot get his last name correct. Shame on me again as a fellow Italian. But Brandon, Marco, Columbia, how far are they going to go?
See, I look at Columbia being in Division 6, if I'm remembering right, correct? They're one of the... So there's really not a lot of competition for them down there. And when you're talking about going against smaller schools, it's all about who has that elite talent, just a couple of key positions. And when you have a Marco Sirigliano, again, 2,000 rushing yards this season in the regular season, almost just behind there, 36 touchdowns, 36. That is the definition of a dominant player. And again, if you're able to just feed him all night, not let the other offenses get on the field and get in a rhythm, it's really hard for me to see anybody really stopping Columbia making a deep run here. And then, of course, one other team we have to mention that I brought up last week in my lead pipe lock, that was the Elyria Catholic and Levi Ellis. Again, this kid, we can gush about him for forever. 183 yards per game this season, 24 touchdowns. In the playoff game last week, he actually broke the Elyria Catholic career rushing record. And is now the sole owner of the most rushing yards in school history. And again, he gets it done on the defensive side of the ball as well, led the team in tackles during the regular season and is a force on defense. So again, when you're talking about, making a run in the playoffs is having these dominant running backs is so incredibly important. And really, we've talked about for all three of these teams, they all have the ability, I think, to make it to the Final Four. If we're talking about making hard predictions here, I definitely see both Holy Name and Columbia making that run. Holy Name, again, like I said, it's just an offense that's impossible to really plan for. And Marco Sergliano for Columbia, you just sometimes get players that are too much and are just going to take over games for you. And it's as simple as that. And I see Columbia doing just that. Elyria Catholic, again, they've got a little bit of a tougher road coming out of their division. I still think they have a chance, but couple inconsistencies throughout the season. They're, I guess, overachieving to an extent just because they don't really have that playoff pedigree that some of these other teams that we've been talking about have. So it might be a little more difficult for them to make a deep run, get that playoff experience under their belts. But again, three great teams here, and it's all about the running back.
So I want to talk to all three of you about this next team. I covered them 3 times this year. I've covered them, their system. The kids who are seniors on Avon Lake, I've covered them since they've been freshmen and beyond, right? Even went to an 8th grade game once when they were in 8th grade. I've seen the system come up. A lot of people this year said the SWC had a down year. Berea McPark rebuilded. I believe they went either 7-3 or 6-4, but they kind of struggled a little bit. And obviously Olmsted Falls and Avon were the class of the division. I don't think anybody's going to dispute that. They both handled and kind of blew out Avon Lake. But now Avon Lake's in a situation where they're traveling to, one of the top seeds in that region. This is a big time thing. Division 2, Region 6. You look at the teams in Division 2, Region 6. We've covered almost all of them, with the exception of these 2 Toledo teams that we're going to be covering this weekend. But when you look at the division, we've seen all these teams time and time again. That being said, though, you guys saw them opening week. You saw how impressive Avon looked over Strongsville. What were your impressions of them, and what do you think their chances are? They have a red-hot running back with Wade Nelson. Jeremy Disick has come of age as a senior quarterback. He's grown leaps and bounds this year. Do you think they have what it takes under head coach Matt Kostelnik to go into Toledo and stun one of the top seeds in the division? Cole?
Yeah, well, obviously it was week 1, and we saw them against Strongsville. A lot changes throughout the season. But I've seen Avon Lake in the past. I know what they have there on their team. And you're right, they have a lot of talented seniors, a lot of talented skill position players, okay? And that's what I want to point out. When Avon Lake has seemed to struggle as of late is against Avon, against Olmsted Falls, teams with very physical offensive lines, very physical defensive lines. That's when they haven't matched up. Outside, corners on defense, just in the secondary in general. They're wide receivers. They have that ability. They have tons of talent out there. But I just look at their line as maybe a little bit smaller than some of those other lines, not quite as physical. And that's where they've gone up against some teams that they are just built on physicality, like the Olmsted Falls Bulldogs, like the Avon Eagles, and they haven't really been able to do anything with them this year. They struggled with those games. Now, Avon Lake, like I talked about, they have the potential. And here's what I have to say that's good for them. Last year, down year for them. A lot of those guys were juniors, still really developing, settling in. It's why they were 7-4, I believe.
Yes.
Now, the team before that, they were really solid. They were good. And I take a look at this game, and we're going to touch on the Toledo Central Catholic game here in a moment. And I'd say the team 2 years ago would have a really good chance to go up there and make some noise.
They did. 2 years ago in 2020, they played this game in Toledo, won to earn the what would have been the Elite 8 rematch with Avon.
Exactly.
And just real quick, because it's my show. I'll say whatever the heck I want. That Avon Lake team is one of my all-time favorite teams. And before I get the angry emails and tweets, so was that Avon team. That Avon and that Avon Lake team from 2020. I think they could have beat anybody. But yeah, finish your point. I apologize for cutting you off, but you touched one of my hot buttons, so I had to.
Yeah, exactly. That team 2 years ago was so good. And this team is definitely improved from last year, but they're not the team from 2 years ago. I just think that team from 2 years ago was different. They had just a different grittiness, a different physicality. You're going to try to look for Matthew Stewie. Disick's going to be looking for him. Obviously, You have Nelson in the backfield. You can run the ball with him. I'm impressed with it in the secondary specifically. Pierre and Pepe make some big plays.
He's back.
And he
He's
is
back
back
from injury.
Yeah, so that's huge for them. But you're going up against a buzzsaw game in this, and I'm also going to touch on, before we get to this game, let the other guys talk about Avon Lake. You mentioned the SWC being down this year. I disagree. I actually think it's the complete opposite. I think it's up from last year, okay? Maybe down from 2 years ago because of teams like Avon Lake, but I think it's up from last year. Why do I say that? This year, I have my true belief is that Avon is going to be up against Winton Woods in the Division II championship. That is my gut feeling. I think this is Avon's year. Olmsted Falls is better than last season. Hard to believe because they were great last season, but I think they can make the same run, if not maybe get one step farther in the playoffs with the ability that they have. I just think Rocco Conti, Jack Pinchek, some of those guys getting an extra year under their belt now has really helped them and increase their explosiveness. Avon Lake's better from the team last year. Bria Midpark, I still think, is pretty comparable to last year. Hudson Devins at running back as a senior, better than as a junior. I think that helps the argument there. North Ridgeville is better than what I saw them as last year. In general, the SWC was up, which I think helped test teams like Avon and Olmsted Falls and Avon Lake, who are trying to make a run here in the postseason.
Dom and Brandon, I know it was week one, it was a little ways ago, but what were some of the things about Avon Lake that jumped out to you opening night? Because that was a blowout. I mean, they came right out and smoked Strongsville. What are some of the things that you remember from that opening night that you see them possibly doing again?
I think we saw a team that trusted their game plan on offense. They had a quarterback that they knew that they could get behind. Last year, there were so many changes that they didn't know. I think every week they didn't know who was starting because of injuries and all that. Last year, we saw a team that was a little lost later in the season. Easy way to put it. This year, that first week, they didn't look lost. They looked confident. Yes, I know they have 2-3 losses, maybe. I had a 2-win conference. I know that for sure.
2 total.
2 total losses. Better than last year. This is a team that's confident that they can go back and beat Avon, that they can go back and beat Olmsted Falls. Do we know that yet? No. This is a team that can cover well. They have the talent to guard people man-to-man or drop back into zone. They have the talent to spread the ball out. Right, maybe running might not be their strong suit. A small offensive line does not mean a bad offensive line. It means a quick, it means a fast, it means a nimble offensive line. Now, when you have a big, stout defensive line, it can cause some issues. Let your offensive line be in space, do some zone schemes. Maybe gap and power may not be your thing, but zone can be at your advantage. Outside zone, inside zone, run some traps with the zone scheme. You'll be able to do that with this offensive line. Again, have not seen them since week one, but I can only imagine that they can win here in this week too. I believe that. I think other people will believe that. This is a team that can pull off upsets as they believe that they can make their way to the state championship. Because this team believes that this is their year.
Quickly, before I get to Brandon, this also in Avon Lake, they're very resilient. When I saw them play Avon this year, Avon had 6 possessions in the first half deep in Avon Lake territory. 6 Kelly McLean red zones, K-Mac red zone possessions there, right? They only scored twice on Avon Lake in a rivalry game. You guys saw it last year, Colio and Dom, in a game where, oh my God, that's probably one of the greatest high school football games I'm sure either one of you have ever seen, where Avon Lake was getting smoked early 10-0. All of a sudden, I think had a ridiculous 30-point second quarter or something insane, and then spent the entire second half hanging on to win. So we know they could do it. Brandon, what do you think about Avon Lake?
Yeah, so this might not be the greatest all-around Avon Lake team that we've seen in the last few years, because it feels like they're always hanging around the playoffs and always making some sort of a run. But what we can't forget, and what I think is easy to put in the back of your mind a little bit, is just how good this Avon Lake defense is and how hot of a start that they got off to. Again, we kind of forget about this because they did have those 2 blowout losses to Avon and then to Olmsted Falls, where they gave up 42 and then 56 respectively. But keep a couple things in mind. One, I think we all agree that Avon and Olmsted Falls are 2 of the best teams that we have in the high school playoffs in general right now. They're both off They're both very hot coming into this. But then two, the familiarity with Avon Lake. It's a lot easier to scout defense within your own conference when you're playing year in and year out. So Avon and Olmsted Falls, they knew where they could exploit Avon Lake, and they obviously took advantage of that. But look at the non-conference schedule, which obviously this Toledo game is going to be as well. They between 4 now non-conference games, including the playoffs last week, they have given up 7 total points in 4 non-conference games. So I understand that Avon Lake's going to be the underdog coming into this, but just not forget how this defense has the ability to take over games. It doesn't matter what the offense is doing. They have the ability to pitch a shutout, and when you've got a defense like that, you're going to at least have the ability to hang in any game. So again, it's tough to pick Avon Lake to make a super deep run here, but I definitely still like their chances against Toledo Catholic this season.
Absolutely, guys. We got a little bit of time left before we get to the lightning round with Dom. And before we do, though, I have a question for Brandon and Cole because you guys were there that night. We talked a little bit about it last week. My favorite game that you called, as I said before, was actually a Dom and Cole called game between Mentor and Medina. My second favorite game, though, and one I think I've watched about 6 times. I'm not joking, at least 6 times. Padua, North Royalton. What a blast that was. Shout out to both of you guys. You crushed it. Brandon, phenomenal job on play-by-play. But my question is this. North Royalton now, they've stayed hot, right? Now they're in the playoffs. They're traveling to Avon. Tom, you're cracking me up. They're traveling to Avon. What did you see again from week 3? And what will they need to do? Because Avon is, again, it's a juggernaut. Obviously, Cole's picking them to go all the way there against Winton Woods in Division 2. But you had a good look at North Royalton. What is dangerous about the Bears, Cole?
They got to run the ball. That's their only chance. The problem is that front 7 of Avon's just so physical. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Avon's going to roll. I don't think Royalton honestly has a chance. Hey, loved covering that game for Royalton. Their schedule just has not given them the same tests, obviously, that they're going to have going up against Avon. Trust me, you did not see a team, for everybody at North Royalton out there, you did not see a team the level of Avon this season. Yeah, I know that some of those other teams you came across, Hudson, they had an undefeated record. I know they would have seen Highland as well. And obviously Highland, a great team. So there are some teams that they know of, that they've seen, that are good. I just think Avon's a whole different physicality level. Glad to see North Royalton really get this far, but I think the road ends here.
Cole, before we get to Brandon, where can North Royalton fans find you on Twitter?
Yep, they can find me at CDM_2910, and also if you want to just add the Avon Lake Shoreman in there, they can reach me out at the same place because I think Toledo Central Catholic, they roll. I mean, they've been blowing everybody out, and their only loss was to St. Ed's by 3 points. So I just think the Shoreman, their road ends here as well. So we'll just knock out both in the same little segment here.
Listen, man, it's okay. I don't think I can walk in John Marshall anytime soon. And that is my mom and my aunts and like all the DeLuca side of my family, all John Marshall alum. So, yeah, hey, it's the fun of being a sportscaster. Brandon, what do you think? I mean, North Royalton, you've seen them do it. You were both you and Cole 2 years ago. You were there for that magical night. You've seen what the Bears could do on the road. But my, oh my, what a challenge with Avon. What needs to go down?
So at It's Soder Not Pop on Twitter. It's so again, I feel like I bring it up every time we're talking about high school or on a broadcast. We saw the core of this team back in 2020 make a very improbable run. We know they have grit. We know they have heart. So I will never sit here and completely put the Bears out of it. But Avon's a different animal this year, guys. I'm with Cole. I see them making a run all the way to the state title game. It's just like you said, the schedule hasn't been there for North Royalton. There's no part of their game that really sticks out. There's no part that they particularly dominate in on offense or defense. And we saw them even against Padua. While they did eventually get that win, that was a tight game the whole time. And I don't think any of us are arguing that Padua is going to be, a powerhouse of any time, as Dom is What is Dom doing? I'm
Kent
sorry.
State's quarterback threw a pass. It got deflected. He caught the ball, then threw the ball again. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. I'm so confused.
How am I supposed to compete with that?
You're not.
No, it's.
How is there score in the World Series game? We're 3 pitches in. How's there no score yet? I want to know what's going on, Brandon.
No, just to put a bow on it, man. Avon is going to roll in this one, I believe. If North Royalton has any chance, like I was saying before with Holy Name in Columbia, it's all about the run game and limiting your mistakes and keeping Avon's offense off the field, but I just can't see it happening.
All right, guys, before we have our closing thoughts for the night, Dom, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Does pineapple go on a pizza?
No. All right, here's your Dumb Clay lightning round. We'll go down to the border to Western Pennsylvania. Farrell has a bye. Sharpsville has a bye for the class of 2A. Farrell, Sharpsville, they will go to the D10 championship game, and Farrell will win by 3 scores. They're a small school that has D10 or has Division I athletes every single year, and they're going to win the state title in the 2A division. My hometown Hickory Hornets, they face... who do they face? They face General McLean, the number 2 seed in District 10. Hickory, they're going all the way to the second round, and they'll probably lose, but that's okay. I believe in the Hornets. Then let's go down to the other side of the border. The Brookfield Warriors. They won as I predicted, and now they face off against number 4 Dalton at 9-2. Brookfield, they're going to win this game. They're going to go to the second round, and they're going to go all the way to the state championship as a 5 seed. Go Warriors.
Dom, you still got 4 minutes left.
Dom, how do you prepare for the show? Is it like just a pot of coffee or what?
Vince, I just think about what I care about, right? I care about talking fast, eating pasta, and talking about football.
There was more questions to the lightning round. You went berserk after one.
I mean, I could keep going.
Is it okay to put any toppings on your meatball sub other than mozzarella and sauce?
I mean, sausage. You can put sausage on your pizza. Pepperoni is always great. Different types of cheese. Even a vegetable pizza. I do not mind. I love a good vegetable pizza. A little white sauce on that bad boy.
Oh, man.
Brought to you by Cholesterol Medicine. Okay. So, guys, we got a little over 3 minutes. We're going to go around the board. Cole, you got a big one again this weekend. Break it down for us, man.
Yeah, before I do that, here's the thing. Honestly, if we can always line up like this, we can rename the show The Italians and the Other Guys, because we got you guys over here going on your Italian tangents over here, and then we got me and Brandon. So this has been a good one here tonight. So hopefully we can get this to line up the same way it has. But my game, though, Wadsworth, I'm sorry. I know I didn't pick you guys last week.
Picked against them.
I picked against them once. Hey, I said Illyria was going to get the upset. You won that game. It was a good win. But after what I saw from Medina, yeah, things were a little bit slower in the first half, but I saw them add that wrinkle of the physicality and adding in those goal line formations, that goal line package. Having Stoddard taking snaps under center, things we didn't see throughout the regular season. So if Medina could just spread the ball out to their wide receivers, put their wide receivers in the backfield, specifically Wojak in as the pistol back, and now they have a physical goal line package. I just don't see the Battling Bees being taken down quite yet. I really think that unless something crazy happens, my guess is it's going to be St. Ed's and Medina again, the 1 and the 2 facing off against each other. Medina, they got things rolling in the second half, and I just think they continue to do so. So sorry, Wadsworth. I know I was wrong last week. We'll see what happens this week, but yeah, I'm going with the Battling Bees here.
I am, I picked against my alma mater last week. I took Valley Forge, and over North Olmsted. North Olmsted proved me wrong. It's going to be tough to see North Olmsted do that 2 weeks in a row as they travel to Highland. I think this might be it. I want to shout out Xavier Balson, Jared Kelly, Colin Willard, Daniel Ferdui. I covered all of you guys. Since you've been freshmen, it's been a blast. Go out, give them hell. Make North Olmsted proud is all I have to say. All right, we got a minute left, so we're going to make this super, super quick before we go home. Cole, yes or no, should the playoffs stick to Friday night only?
Just Friday night. Saturdays for college.
Interesting. Dom.
I at the schedule for PA when I was talking about that. There's games on Fridays and there's games on Saturdays. I played all my playoff games in high school on Saturdays. Even the smaller divisions played on Thursdays. It makes it easier so the refs aren't spread out so thin. You're able to have refs for all the games. Fans are able to attend all of them. I think it's better if you have games on all 3 days that are given on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Brandon.
From a purely selfish Keon Sports point of view, I want them on Fridays and Saturdays. Let's get as many games covered as we can.
I agree. 100% with Brandon. We'll explain more why next week. Guys, we love you. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you next week. The Italian Stallion will be here once again.